In ancient times, people lived in one large cave and never ventured outside. Once outside, they were struck by the beauty of their surroundings and did not desire to return to the cave ever again. They lived in harmony with the animals and did not see any difference between the animals and themselves. Seeing how fast the larger birds could run, the people tried to resemble them. Time passed, and the birds went to the first man, Nakmatugi, to find out who people were, and receiving an answer to their question, refused to live together with people. So did the other animals. The animals gathered together and started to argue about man's mortality. The snake was the first to speak. "We shall burn the people who have died, and they will become immortal, rising from the ashes just as I change my skin and live forever." The bird answered, "When a man dies, I shall mourn his death and fall in the mud by his lifeless body." And from that time, people burned the bodies of their dead and mourn them, and they hunt animals and birds. This old legend explains not only the origins of the Dani Dugum people, but also the intricacies of the relationship between people and animals. The animals became the hunted because they refused to live with people. I heard this legend for the first time as I was getting ready to go on a hunting expedition for a opossum, or the couscous as it is known in these parts. The opossum is an exotic animal the size of a domestic cat with a long tail, which it uses to cling to branches when climbing trees. It feeds on fruit, leaves, birds' eggs, and small rodents. It is indigenous to New Guinea and northern Australia. The arrows are made from bamboo that is heated over a fire and straightened. The end of the arrow, to which the arrowhead is attached, is carefully covered with tar, and the arrowhead is secured with thin strips of vine. For the arrowhead to be firmly secured, holes are made in the arrow. The edges of the arrow should be straight. To achieve this, the unnecessary part of the bamboo rod is splintered and removed. Into the opening goes an arrowhead made of other, more durable wood, consisting of 3 parts. It is then firmly secured. The parts of the arrowhead are then separated and secured with handmade string. By this method, a trident is made. This kind of arrowhead is predominantly used by the natives when hunting for birds. Another type of arrowhead is made from a piece of splintered bamboo that is attached to the shaft with tar and then secured with a strip of dried vine. The razor-sharp arrow penetrates deep into the body of the intended victim, producing lethal wounds. This type of arrow is intended for hunting large animals and birds. The Dani Dugum tribe does not use poisoned arrows. The bow itself usually reaches 180 centimeters in length. The tropical jungles of New Guinea are the home of a very rare bird, the kazawar. It is very careful, therefore to see it in the wild is quite difficult. It is quite large, standing nearly 5 feet tall and weighs about 60 kilograms. The small head of the kazawar has a small helmet made of bone that serves as protection when the bird makes its way through the dense jungle vegetation. As a rule, the male of the species sits on the eggs until they hatch. He also raises the young nestlings until they can fend for themselves. Obviously, we startled it by coming too close to its nest. One of the hunters decided to find it, for the eggs of the kazawar could become a good addition to the rations of the natives. And this is not surprising, for one egg can weigh up to 800 grams and equals approximately 14 chicken eggs. The 2 eggs we found were enough to feed 6 hunters. The hunt continued. Dense tropical jungle stretched in every direction. The trees had intricate patterns of vines hanging from them. Despite the abundance of fauna, it is far more difficult than it seems to provide oneself with food in the jungle. In search of the opossum, we followed paths made by animals. The couscous is very careful and leads a nocturnal existence, moving from branch to branch at a height of 10-15 meters. We spent a whole day trying to track one down. All of a sudden, the hunters became quite animated. They had finally found one. The first arrow missed its mark and only startled the animal. The chase was on. The Papua natives tried to get the animal to a certain place, pursuing it by jumping from branch to branch. The hunters that remained on the ground were attentively following the chase, ready to shoot the prey at any moment. Finally, an arrow found its target. The opossum desperately fought for its life, but its strength was failing it. It fell to the ground, already dead. Carefully removing the arrow, the hunter carried the opossum to the place where a temporary camp had been set up. The dead opossum was placed on a large stone, and in order to simplify the process of dismembering it, a hunter struck it several times with another stone. Using a bamboo knife, the hunters make an incision in the lower part of the opossum's belly and start to take out its intestines. Afterwards, they fill the cavity with the leaves of special plants in order to give the meat a pleasant aroma. After this is done, the prey is singed over an open fire. Because in the jungle it is not possible to cook meat in an earth oven, it is prepared by a different method. The animal is wrapped in banana leaves, together with hot stones, covered with grass, and a heavy weight is placed on top. While the meat was being cooked, the conversation turned to the topic of birds. Along with wild boars, opossums, crocodiles, cazuars, and kangaroos, New Guinea is the home to over 700 varieties of birds, some of which can only be found here, such as birds of paradise, famous for their colorful plumage, which is used by the Papua natives in making their traditional head decorations. Malayan traders called them God's birds. The Portuguese named them sunbirds. Until the 18th century, Europeans that came to this island believed that these birds came from heaven. They did not have feet, and they were perpetually in the air, feeding on dew and the flowers of aromatic plants. Local inhabitants are experts on survival in the jungle. They know what to eat and what not to. They gather nuts, eat bugs and caterpillars. They can imitate the call of birds and animals. In these regions, over a period of many thousands of years, people hunt using traditional methods, without upsetting the balance of nature or causing it harm. For centuries, the Dani tribe has accepted what the tropical rainforest has given them. Medicine from medicinal plants. Trees were used to build dwellings and to make weapons. Vines were used for making clothes. In comparison with us, The Aborigines are quite capable of living in conditions that we would not be able to live in for more than a week. To this day, nature remains the basis for their existence. Our conversation continued. One of the hunters reminded me that in this region, where we were, taipans, the most poisonous snakes in the world, were quite common. This reptile reaches 2.5 meters in length and contains enough poison to kill 80 grown men. The taipan's poison contains neurotoxins. They affect the nervous system, bringing about paralysis of the limbs and body. Death comes as a result of respiratory arrest. I knew that nearby was a swamp, overgrown with dense grass, and that large snakes lived there, although none of the natives ever ventured near. This fact fired my curiosity, and I decided to go there on a hunting expedition, for I knew that the meat of the python is considered a delicacy by the Papua natives. Moving through the swamp is quite difficult. I was losing my patience trying to spy snakes on the floating logs and small patches of land. Suddenly, the silence was disturbed by a splash. Several meters in front of me, the body of a snake appeared. It was a large python, about 3 meters in length. Noticing me, he immediately disappeared under the water's surface. Everything happened instantaneously. Eventually, I brought about 10 kilograms of excellent meat with me when I returned to camp. My wife led me to the waterfall to wash off the blood and the mud of the swamp. I was very tired after my hunting expedition and could barely keep up with Vamake, who effortlessly moved along the slippery, moss-covered stones. Of course, to the casual observer, the Papua natives may seem bloodthirsty and cruel because they hunt and kill animals, but this is not exactly the case. Life on New Guinea is hard and dangerous. The Aborigines do not hunt for the sake of sport, as is customary for us. Not for hunting trophies that you can hang on the walls of your home. Not for sport. When they succeed in capturing an animal, they kill it quickly and neatly. This act has absolutely nothing in common with cruelty, for the Papua natives hunt only when they are hungry. Their life is simple yet very practical, for they are consumed by their everyday struggle for survival. From the time they are children, they learn to use the resources that nature provides, to take only what is necessary at any particular time. Having lived among the natives for 5 years, I remain convinced that they live in complete harmony with Mother Nature, accepting her just as she is. Night was approaching. My friends decided that after my successful python hunting expedition, I should return to the village wearing body paint decorations, as is customary for this tribe. This was a gesture of respect and acceptance on their part. In the twilight, we were returning to our village, to our home.